Welcome back to the deep dive. We're doing something a little different today.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shift from the usual.
Right, because usually when we talk about the quote-unquote economy, people's eyes just kind of glaze over. They think of, spreadsheets and inflation rates and guys in suits yelling at stock tickers.
Right, the boring stuff.
Exactly. But today we are talking about something much more visceral. We're talking about the identity of a nation. We are exploring how a massive, chaotic, diverse country like India stands up in the global marketplace, dusts itself off, and says, we are open for business.
And it's a fascinating area because it's where policy actually meets reality.
It is.
We are looking at how India is trying to transform from a passive participant in the global economy, someone who just follows the rules, to an actual rule maker. It's a story of ambition, but also some really severe constraints.
Exactly. And we are going to tear into that story. But before we unpack all of that, and we have a massive stack of research today, I need to speak directly to you, our listener, and specifically to our Simplified UPSC by PPP community.
Yeah, you guys really are the heartbeat of this channel.
100%. We see the comments, we see the engagement, and it honestly fuels us.
The level of discourse in the community has been incredible lately. I've been reading through it.
It really has. But here is the humble ask, and I'm going to be completely straight with you. We need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Oh, please do.
It helps us immensely with retention and algorithm visibility, which means we can keep doing this deep research-heavy work for you. And if you are capable, and only if you're capable, supporting us on Patreon is vital.
It really keeps the lights on.
It keeps the lights on, it keeps the coffee brewing, and it keeps this super useful content coming your way without us having to cut corners.
And we have to give a massive heartfelt shout out to our current patrons and supporters. You literally make this possible.
Absolutely. So please like the video, leave those valuable comments below. We read them, and they help the whole community learn. And a quick resource alert for you. Free notes with practice year questions or PYQs are waiting for you right now on the public Telegram channel.
But if you want the full experience, access to all videos of this series at once.
Right, along with organized premium notes, detailed explanations, extra PYQs, and those model mains answers you need to join the private Telegram library. Just DM us on the public Telegram channel to get in.
I have to say, those model mains answers are a complete game changer for anyone prepping for the exams. It's one thing to know the facts, but it's another to know how to structure them for a high score.
They really are the secret weapon. Okay, let's get to the mission. Today we are cracking open Chapter 21 of Sanjeev Verma's book, Going Forward, India and Globalization.
But we aren't just stopping there.
No, we are cross-referencing it with the deep insights from Vivek Singh's Indian economy to get the full 360 picture.
And the scope today is broad but critical. We're looking at three main pillars. First, trade strategies. Essentially, how do nations actually get rich, and why can't India just copy China or South Korea?
Which everyone always asks.
All right, second, branding India. What is the actual machinery behind Make in India, beyond just the cool logo? And third, intellectual property rights, the national IPR policy of 2016, and why it fundamentally matters for innovation.
And of course, we are linking all of this directly to previous UPSC questions to show you why this matters for your exams. So let's jump right in. Segment 1, trade strategies. We often hear about the Asian tigers or the East Asian miracle, but India didn't quite follow that path, did it?
No, not exactly.
Varela.
To understand this, we have to set the scene a bit. We need to look at the transition from a closed economy to an open one. Sanjeev Verma talks about the global village concept.
Right, global village.
Now, global village sounds very kumbaya, but economically it's quite intense. It is the idea that globalization isn't just about shipping goods back and forth. It is about the extreme interdependence of economies.
Meaning if something happens over there, we feel it here.
Precisely. It's about a shrinking world, where an event in one market, say a housing crash in the U.S., ripples through the Indian IT sector almost instantly.
So in this global village, you have two main ways to play the game right. Two strategies to actually get rich. Let's break those down because I think a lot of people assume there is only one way to become a developed nation.
Right. The first strategy is what we call export-led growth. This is the classic model used by the Asian tigers. So South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and later the ASEAN countries like Malaysia and Thailand.
And what defines that strategy? Is it really just selling a whole lot of stuff to other countries?
It is much more aggressive than that. It is an extreme, almost ruthless focus on the external market. Domestic production is geared almost entirely toward what the outside world wants to buy.
So they aren't building for themselves.
Exactly. You suppress domestic consumption to some extent. Literally, people are told to save their money, not spend it, so that capital can be funneled into building factories. You keep wages highly competitive, and you basically become the factory for the world. Verma uses a really beautiful analogy here. He calls them butterfly economies.
Butterfly economies, I like that. Why butterfly, though? Just because they're pretty?
No, it's because of their biology.
Right.
Think about a butterfly. It has a very short lifespan. It is small, but it goes through a rapid total metamorphosis.
Oh, I see. From a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Exactly. Countries like South Korea or Taiwan in the 60s and 70s were small. They were often authoritarian, and they were culturally homogenous. They could pivot the entire ship of state in 5 years.
They could just change directions overnight?
Yes. They could say, we aren't farmers anymore. Today we make wigs. Tomorrow we make steel.
Yeah.
The day after we're doing semiconductors. They were nimble. They transformed rapidly because they didn't have a massive internal inertia holding them back.
Okay, so that is the butterfly. But India, just looking at the map, looking at the census, India is definitely not a butterfly.
No, India is an elephant. And that brings us to the second strategy, which is growth-led exports.
How is that fundamentally different?
In growth-led exports, the focus is on expanding the domestic economy first. You have massive population, right? 1.4 billion people.
That is a market all on its own.
Exactly. That is a massive internal market. So you focus on satisfying that internal demand first. As the domestic sector matures, as your industries become efficient and reach economies of scale by selling to your own people, they naturally start spilling over into exports.
Because they've gotten so good at it at home.
Right. This is the continental approach. It's much more relevant for large, diverse economies like India and initially China.
Because we have constraints that the tigers just didn't have to deal with.
Sanjeev Verma points this out very clearly. India has a massive population, deep regional imbalances, and huge structural rigidities. You can't just tell a billion people, okay, everyone stop what you're doing. We are all making microchips for America now.
It just doesn't work in a democracy.
It doesn't. An elephant takes time to turn. If you try to pivot an elephant too fast, you break things. The Asian tiger model is structurally difficult for India to replicate overnight because of our sheer size and our democratic complexity.
So we are just strictly following the growth-led model then.
Well, here's where it gets interesting. We are actually blending them. Sanjeev Verma highlights that India is trying to create export-led pockets within a broader growth-led economy. Think of the special economic zones, or SEZs.
Right, I see those SEZ signs everywhere.
Exactly. These SEZs are designated areas that act almost like those Asian tigers. They are duty-free enclaves, they are export-focused, they have simplified labor laws, and they sit right inside the larger Indian elephant. It's an attempt to have the best of both worlds.
That sounds incredibly logical. But I have to ask the skeptic's question here. If the Asian tigers got rich so fast using export-led growth, I mean, just look at Seoul today versus 1960. Why doesn't India just go full export mode? Why mess around with the hybrid? Why not just subsidize exports like crazy across the board?
That is the million-dollar question. And their answer lies in a concept called trade diversion. If you focus too heavily on exports without fixing your domestic efficiency first, you run a huge risk. You might actually end up subsidizing foreign consumption.
Subsidizing foreign consumption, that sounds a bit abstract. Can you unpack that with a real example?
Sure. Think of it this way. Imagine the Indian government gives a domestic steel plant $1 billion in tax breaks, cheap land, and subsidized electricity, specifically so they can export steel.
Okay, so the steel plant can sell steel cheaper globally because their operating costs are artificially lower.
Right. So now a car manufacturer in Germany buys that cheap Indian steel. They get an absolute bargain. But who actually paid for that bargain?
I guess the Indian taxpayer did via the tax breaks and the subsidies.
Exactly. The Indian taxpayer is effectively subsidizing the profit margins of a German car company. That is trade diversion. You are diverting national wealth and resources to subsidize foreign consumers rather than building efficient infrastructure that helps everyone in India, not just a specific exporter.
Wow, okay, so if your domestic industry isn't fundamentally efficient on its own export, subsidies are just a transfer of wealth from your own citizens to foreign buyers.
That is the exact trap India wants to avoid.
That makes total sense. It's like building a fancy guest house for visitors while your own family lives in a house with a leaking roof. You need the domestic foundation to be structurally strong, or the export growth is totally hollow.
Precisely. And this ties perfectly into the theory of comparative advantage. This is Economics 101, but it's crucial here. The theory says that if India is labor abundant, which we definitely are, we should naturally export labor-intensive goods. If Germany is capital abundant, they naturally export cars and heavy machinery. Trade happens to maximize efficiency for both sides.
But Vivek Singh adds a really interesting layer to this in his book. He talks about moving beyond just simple buying and selling.
Yes. Vivek Singh brings in the concept of moving from vertical trading to horizontal trading.
What's the distinction there?
Vertical trading is the old-school colonial style. I dig up iron ore, I sell the raw dirt to you, you make the high-value steel. It's purely transactional. I am at the bottom of the ladder, you are at the top.
Right.
Horizontal trading, on the other hand, is about true economic cooperation. It's about integrating services, technology transfer, and deeper long-term partnerships. It's not just, I sell, you buy. It's, let's build a complex supply chain together. That is where India is desperately trying to position itself now. We don't just want to be a raw material supplier anymore. We want to be an equal partner in the global value chain.
Which is a perfect segue to our next segment. If you want to build those high-level partnerships, if you want to move from just selling raw materials to being a global manufacturing hub, you need a brand. You need to tell the world loud and clear, we are ready. You can't just be an elephant lumbering around. You need to show you can dance.
And that brings us squarely to Make in India.
Launched in September 2014, we've all seen the logo everywhere, the lion.
The lion made entirely of gear wheels. It's a very powerful, striking image. It symbolizes manufacturing as the literal engine, the gears of national development. But as Sanjeev Verma points out, it is not just a cool graphic, it is a highly calculated branding exercise for the entire country.
Okay, I get the branding. The lion with the gear wheels, it looks great on a billboard at Davos. But we have to be real here. Branding doesn't build actual factories. Is Make in India actually a genuine policy shift, or is it just a slick marketing wrapper around what was already happening anyway?
That is the cynic's view, and honestly, it's a completely fair question. Vivek Singh actually tackles this head-on. He argues that while the slogan is definitely marketing the machinery underneath it, is fundamentally different. It's not just about a logo. It's about the 6P protocol that Sanjeev Verma outlines.
I love these frameworks. They really help structure the chaos of policy. Let's go through them. What are the 6 Ps?
So the first P is program. This is the core mission, transforming India into a global manufacturing hub. It's the what. But the second P is arguably the most important one, process.
Success. That sounds like more bureaucracy.
It's actually the exact opposite. It's about killing the bureaucracy. This is the ease of doing business stuff. For decades, India was infamous for the license raj. If you wanted to build a simple factory, you needed 50 different permissions from 50 different desks, and half of them wanted a bribe just to move the paper.
Right. It was a nightmare for investors.
Process is about aggressively overhauling those outdated regulations, digitizing things, removing steps.
Which leads directly to the third P, partners.
Yes, and this represents a fundamental psychological shift. The government is trying to shift from being a regulator, the guy who says no, the guy who inspects and penalizes you, to a business partner, the guy who actually helps you navigate the system and grow.
That is a massive cultural shift for the Indian bureaucracy, going from I am the ultimate authority to I am a facilitator for your business.
Massive.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's not fully there yet across the board, but that is the explicit goal. Then you have the fourth P, progress, which is about opening up previously locked sectors. Remember when railways and defense were completely closed off to the outside world?
I did.
Make in India actively pushed to open these critical areas to foreign direct investment, or FDI.
And the fifth P,
plan. This is about inspiring long-term confidence. You need a 10-year roadmap that foreign investors can actually believe in before they sink billions into concrete. And finally, the sixth P is people, or partnerships. This is the collaborative effort between the DIPP, the Department of Industrial Policy, and promotion, the state governments, and the private industry leaders. Everyone has to be pulling the rope in the exact same direction.
Vivek Singh also chimes in here with his own framework, right? He talks about the 4 pillars of Make in India. It overlaps a bit with the Ps, but I think it's worth looking at because it gives us some very concrete metrics to judge success by.
It does. It reinforces the same core themes. First, new processes, again, deregulation. But he notes specifically the goal of reducing the time to register a new company from 10 days down to just 1 single day.
That's a huge tangible metric.
Exactly. If you can legally incorporate in 24 hours, that changes the entire game for a tech startup or a foreign firm. Then the second pillar is new infrastructure. Industrial corridors, smart cities, dedicated freight lines. You simply cannot manufacture goods without reliable power and fast roads. Third is new sectors. identifying 25 specific focus areas like auto, aviation, biotech, defense. And finally, the fourth pillar, new mindset, the whole maximum governance philosophy.
There is a key phrase that talks up in both texts, and honestly, it's one of my favorites because it rhymes, but it also carries a ton of actual policy weight. Zero defect, zero effect.
Yes, this is the ultimate quality and sustainability mandate.
Let's break that down. Zero defect sounds like intense Six Sigma corporate stuff.
It is exactly that. Zero defect means our quality standards must be absolutely world-class, no rejections at the border. For a long time, Made in India suffered from a global perception of being cheap but low quality, or relying on Jugaad, making do with what you have, patching things together.
Right. The quick fix mentality.
This pillar aims to obliterate that perception. If you buy an Indian-made car part, it should be mathematically perfect. It should match or exceed German or Japanese engineering standards.
Okay, and the second half, zero effect.
That refers entirely to the environment. Manufacturing must not harm the environment. It implies deep sustainability. And this is crucial because usually when countries industrialize fast, look at England in the 1800s or China in the 1990s, they completely destroy their environment, first get rich, and then try to fix the smog later.
Right, they pay for growth with their lungs.
Exactly. India is trying to say, we want to industrialize at scale, but we want zero effect on the climate. It's an incredibly ambitious constraint to willingly put on yourself while you are desperately trying to grow your GDP.
There's a strategic nuance here that Vivek Singh mentions, and I think it's really important to clarify because people often get confused on this point. Is Make in India just protectionism 2.0? Is it just throwing up tariffs and blocking imports so we are literally forced to buy local substandard goods?
Vivek Singh is crystal clear on this. Make in India is not about import substitution in the old socialist sense of blocking imports just to protect lazy, inefficient local monopolies.
Okay.
It is about creating an internal environment where Indian firms become efficient enough to naturally compete globally. It's about building capability, not building walls.
And to prove that, you just have to look at the Japan Plus and Korea Plus initiatives.
Exactly. These are dedicated fast-track management teams set up within the government specifically to handle and accelerate investments from Japan and South Korea. If you were a true protectionist, you wouldn't be rolling out the red carpet for Korean tech giants. You are actively inviting them in to build their factories here. You are creating a bureaucratic fast lane for their capital.
So we have the strategy. We are growth-led with export pockets. We have the branding Make in India zero defect. But here's the major snag. The narrative arc of every developing nation always hits this exact wall. You can build all the beautiful factories you want, you can have the coolest lion logo, but if a foreign company comes in with their absolute best technology, their secret sauce, and someone steals it the very next day and copies it, they are never coming back.
That is the hard, unavoidable truth. You cannot have a successful Make in India without a robust, ironclad legal framework to protect ideas. If I'm going to bring my proprietary microchip design to a facility in Bangalore, I need to know for a fact that a local competitor isn't going to clone my blueprints and sell the exact same chip for half the price.
And that brings us directly to segment 3, intellectual property rights, or IPR, the rules of the game.
This right here is the absolute bedrock of a modern knowledge economy.
Let's start with the absolute basics, because I think lay people mix these terms up all the time. Copyright, patent, trademark people use them totally interchangeably in conversation, but they are completely different legal beasts. What are we actually protecting with each of these?
Vivek Singh gives us some really clean definitions here, so let's use those. First, you have patents. A patent is strictly for an invention. It protects the core idea and the utility of it, not just how it looks. If you invent a brand new type of combustion engine or a completely new chemical drug molecule, you get a patent. The term for that monopoly is usually 20 years.
Okay, so that's for things that actually do stuff, functional things. How is that different from copyright?
Copyright is for literary or artistic works, music, movies, software code. It protects the specific expression of the idea, not the idea itself. So you cannot copyright the general idea of a boy wizard going to a magic school. But you absolutely can copyright the specific text of Harry Potter. If I write a story about a boy wizard named Larry Potter going to hogwash, J.K. Rowling's lawyers will come for me because I stole her specific expression of that idea.
Got it. Idea versus expression and
Just
trademarks.
Trademarks are brand names, logo symbols, the Nike swoosh, the Apple logo, the golden M of McDonald's. It identifies the commercial source of the good. It tells the consumer this burger was actually made by McDonald's with their standards, not just some guy in a basement making knockoffs.
Now, here is one that is super important for India specifically. Geographical indications, or GI tags, we hear about this in the news constantly. States fighting over who gets the tag.
Yes, this is crucial for our massive agricultural and traditional artisan sectors. A GI tag identifies a product as originating from a very specific place where a given quality reputation or characteristic is essentially attributable to its geographical origin.
Give us some tasty examples of that.
Basmati rice is the classic one. It has a GI tag covering 7 specific states in northern India. The unique soil and the climate in the Indo-Gangetic plains give basmati its specific length and aroma. If you try to grow that same strain of rice in Texas, and they literally tried this, by the way, they tried to call it Texmati.
Texmati, really?
Yeah, they really did. But it doesn't taste the same. The GI tag prevents them from calling it basmati. It legally protects the brand equity of the farmers in Punjab and Haryana from global corporate knockoffs.
Other examples?
The famous Bengal Rasagola from West Bengal, which had a massive legal fight with the Odisha Rasagola over the tag. The intricate stone sculptures of Mamallapuram. The authentic Mysore silk sari.
Why does this matter economically, though? Is it just about regional pride and winning arguments?
No, it's about hard cash for local communities. It protects traditional community knowledge from exploitation. It adds massive economic premium value. A farmer can charge a significantly higher price for legally GI tagged basmati versus just generic long-grain rice. It prevents biopiracy, too, which is from pharmaceutical companies trying to patent traditional Indian medicinal knowledge like the healing properties of turmeric or neem.
Right, they tried to patent neem, didn't they?
They did, and India had to fight tooth and nail to prove that it was traditional prior knowledge.
Speaking of global rules and massive fights, we have to talk about TRIPS, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights agreement. This was the absolute turning point for India's domestic pharmaceutical industry.
It was a massive, massive turning point. To truly understand the drama here, you have to go back to India's original Patent Act of 1970. It was very, let's call it creators. We only recognize process patents, not product patents, for essential things like food and medicine.
Explain the exact difference there. This is the absolute crux of the whole issue.
Okay, so a product patent means I own this specific drug molecule. No one else in the country can make this molecule, no matter how they try to synthesize it. A process patent, however, means I only own this specific chemical recipe for making the drug.
Okay.
So if you are Pfizer and you make a life-saving drug using method A, you have a patent on method A. But if I, an Indian scientist in a lab in Hyderabad, can figure out how to synthesize the exact same final drug with a totally different chemical method B,
Then you can just legally sell it.
under the 1970 Act. Yes, absolutely. This loophole allowed India to build a massive, incredibly successful generic drug industry. We could reverse engineer insanely expensive Western drugs, find a slightly different chemical process to synthesize them, and then sell them to the masses for literally pennies on the dollar. We became known globally as the pharmacy of the world.
But TRIPS came along and totally changed that landscape.
Yes. To join the World Trade Organization, India had to comply with the TRIPS agreement. We were given a deadline. By 2005, we had to amend our national laws to fully recognize product patents across the board, including pharmaceuticals. This caused a huge panic. Activists and doctors were screaming that life-saving drug prices would skyrocket and the poor would literally die because we couldn't legally make cheap generics for any new drugs invented after 1995.
But we didn't just roll over and accept it, did we? This leads us to the famous Evergreening battle and the landmark Novartis case. This is a favorite topic for UPSC question setters because it really shows India's legal spine on the global stage.
It is, and for very good reason. It shows India intelligently standing its ground within the strict framework of international rules. So evergreening is a highly controversial tactic used by Big Pharma. Let's say their patent on a blockbuster billion-dollar drug is about to expire, meaning their 20 years of monopoly are almost up. So they make a tiny, trivial change to the drug in the lab.
Like what kind of change?
They add a simple salt molecule to it, they slightly change the dosage form, or they just switch it from being a tablet to a gel capsule. Nothing that really changes the medicine. Then they march back to the patent office and file for a brand new 20-year patent on this quote-unquote new invention. They use this trick to keep their monopoly going forever, hence evergreening.
And India just said no to that trick.
We introduced Section 3rd into our amended Patent Act. This clause is the absolute hero of the story. Section 3 explicitly states that a mere discovery of a new form of a known substance does not get a new patent unless, and this is the key phrase, unless it results in the significant enhancement of the known efficacy of that substance.
So you can't just paint the car red and legally call it a brand new invention. The new version has to actually go faster or get better mileage.
Exactly. The drug has to actually cure the patient better. And this was put to the ultimate test in the Novartis versus Union of India case, specifically regarding their blockbuster cancer drug, Gleevec. Novartis applied for a fresh patent for a new form of the drug, the beta-crystalline form. They brought in an army of lawyers and argued it was structurally more stable and slightly easier for the body to absorb.
And what did the Supreme Court of India ultimately say?
The Supreme Court rejected it completely. They looked at Section 3 and said, this minor modification does not improve the therapeutic efficacy significantly. It is fundamentally just a new physical form of the exact same old drug. The cancer patient does not get cured faster. They boldly ruled that this was a blatant attempt at evergreening to artificially extend a monopoly.
Why was the specific judgment so significant globally, though? It made headlines everywhere.
Because it sent a massive shockwave and a clear signal that India prioritizes public health over corporate monopolies. We will fiercely protect genuine groundbreaking innovation. Yes, if you cure a completely new disease, here is your 20-year patent, we will enforce it. But we will not allow companies to creatively game the legal system to keep essential life-saving medicines unaffordable. It legally protected our domestic generic industry, and it kept healthcare costs down for patients not just in India, but across Africa and other developing nations that totally rely on exporting Indian generics.
That is an incredibly powerful stance to take against that kind of lobbying pressure. Moving on to segment 4. All of this intense history, the trade strategies, the Make in India branding, the brutal legal battles over medicine, it all led to a desperate need for a unified, coherent policy. In 2016, the government finally launched the National IPR policy.
And the overarching vision was captured in a new slogan, Creative India, Innovative India.
Why did we actually need a brand new policy document in 2016, though? We already had laws. We had the 1970 Act. We had the WTO amendment.
We had laws, yes, but administratively, they were completely scattered. Copyrights were being managed under the Ministry of Education. Patents were over under the Ministry of Commerce. It was a bureaucratic mess. It was literally like having your car's steering wheel controlled by one driver in the front seat and the brakes controlled by a totally different guy in the back seat. The 2016 policy finally brought everything under one single roof under the DIPP, which is now called the DPIT. It created a single cohesive national framework for the first time.
Sanjeev Verma and Vivek Singh both clearly list out the 7 objectives of this 2016 policy. Let's run through them quickly because they really frame the government's entire logic on this.
Sure, let's do it. Objective 1, awareness. Making people at the grassroots understand that IPR isn't just a tool for big corporate lawyers in Delhi, it's for the village artisan too. If you weave a totally unique textile pattern, you should legally know how to protect it from being stolen.
Right. Objective 2.
Generation. Encouraging a higher volume of filing, getting university scientists and artists to actually legally register their work. India naturally produces a massive amount of knowledge, but historically we don't file nearly enough patents compared to, say, China or the US. We invent things, but we don't lock down the rights.
And objective 3, legal framework.
This is about balancing the rights of the wealthy patent owners with a broader public interest. It's explicitly maintaining that delicate Section 3 balance we just discussed with a Novartis case.
Objective 4, administration.
This is the boring but absolutely vital part. Modernizing the actual patent offices. You can't have a 5-year administrative waiting list to get a patent approved. By the time they stamp the paper, the tech is totally obsolete.
Right, you need speed. Objective 5, commercialization.
Turning those paper ideas into actual money. A brilliant patent sitting in a drawer is useless for the economy if it doesn't eventually reach the open market as a product.
Objective 6, enforcement.
Combating piracy and aggressive counterfeiting. They actually went as far as creating a specific training toolkit for the local police to help them understand and prosecute IPR crimes, which is a huge blind spot before.
And finally, objective 7, human capital.
Teaching the basics of IPR in high schools and colleges so the next generation enters the workforce already being highly IP savvy.
So it's been a good few years since 2016. Have we actually seen tangible results from this policy?
We definitely have. The pendency rate, which is the time it takes to get a patent fully examined and approved, has dropped significantly. As I said, it used to take 7 years or sometimes more. The target was to aggressively bring it down to just 18 months, and we are getting much, much closer to that reality. We've seen massive digitization of electronic generation of certificates instead of paper pushing, and IPR has officially been added to the Insert Commerce curriculum for students. And crucially, our global ranking in the Global Innovation Index, or GII, has been climbing steadily year over year.
But Vivek Singh plays the role of the vital critic in his book, and I think it's really important to hear the other side of this. Is more IP always automatically better? We tend to just assume more patents equals a better economy.
That is the big counterintuitive point here. The official policy essentially assumes a direct, linear relationship. More IP filings equals more national innovation. But Vivek notes a highly valid criticism. In a complex country like India, especially deeply within the informal economy or rural agricultural areas, knowledge sharing is traditionally communal.
Right. If a farmer figures out a slightly better way to sow his seeds, he just tells his neighbor over the fence. He doesn't go hire a lawyer and sue his neighbor for copying him.
Exactly. Grassroots innovation happens through rapid open sharing, not legal hoarding. Superimposing a very strict, highly litigious Western-style IP regime on an informal communal economy might actually severely hurt that informal innovation pipeline. There's this constant massive tension between minimalism, which is actively protecting the public domain and allowing the free flow of information, and maximalism, which is the urge to patent and lock down absolutely everything. India's historical legal culture heavily favors minimalism. Section 3 is proof of that. But the actual language of the 2016 policy sometimes leans a bit heavily toward Western maximalism. It's a very delicate tightrope the government is trying to walk. We need to fiercely make sure we don't accidentally criminalize the very way our massive informal sector traditionally works.
This brings us perfectly to segment 5. So what? For our listeners who are currently grinding and preparing for their exams, we have covered the macro theory, the deep history, and the case law. Now, how does the UPSC actually test this knowledge in reality? We're looking strictly at the Simplified UPSC by PPP source material here.
We really have to look at how these abstract concepts translate into brutal exam questions. Let's look at the prelims first. In 2017, there was a very direct, objective question about the, quote, National Intellectual Property Rights Policy, end quote. It simply asked who the nodal agency is.
And the correct answer was?
The DIPP, which, as we noted, is now the DPIIT. This firmly confirms that knowing the specific administrative shifts, like knowing that copyrights were moved from education to DIPP, is highly testable material. It seems like a minor bureaucratic detail when you read it, but the UPSC absolutely loves testing these structural governance changes. Then in 2019, they asked about the Global Competitiveness Report, and specifically who publishes it. That's the World Economic Forum. This connects directly back to the ease of doing business overarching goals of the Make in India initiative.
Okay, but what about the mains? That's where the deep, complex analysis actually comes in. You can't just tick a multiple choice box there. You have to write an essay.
The mains questions are beautiful, honestly, because they ask for the full story. Look at the 2013 mains question, quote, bringing out the circumstances in 2005, which forced amendment to Section 3rd in Indian Patent Law 1970, discuss how it has been utilized by the Supreme Court in its judgment in rejecting Novartis' patent application for Glivec, end quote.
Wow, that is exactly what we just spent segment 3 discussing. It's practically the transcript of what you just explained.
Exactly. But notice the required structure of the answer. You can't just ramble. For circumstances in 2005, you have to explicitly mention the pressure of WTO and TRIPS compliance. You have to clearly explain the forced transition from process patents to product patents, Section 3rd itself. You have to clearly explain the efficacy clause. The fact that a mere change in form isn't enough. Third, the Novartis judgment. You have to critically analyze the Supreme Court's exact reasoning regarding protecting public health versus allowing corporate evergreening. You cannot just state the dry law. You have to write about the actual tension between global trade pressure and domestic social welfare.
And what about the 2016 mains question?
They asked a broad question about the aims of the WTO regarding international trade, but asked you to critically discuss it from the, quote, Indian perspective. This connects perfectly back to our very first segment on trade strategies. The Indian perspective is all about carefully balancing global integration with the fierce protection of our domestic agriculture and our food security. It's about being that elephant in the room. Engaging with the global village, yes, but strictly on our own terms, not just getting steamrolled.
So the ultimate expert tip for the listener here is don't just memorize the raw statutes. Understand the deep conflict and the grand strategy behind the laws. Why did we actually fight Novartis in court? Why did we bother creating the 6P protocol instead of just running some ads?
Precisely. Why did the government do it? What was the massive systemic risk? What was the calculated economic gain? Demonstrating that deep critical understanding is exactly what gets you the top marks in the mains.
All right, let's wrap this massive deep dive up. We have covered a staggering amount of ground today.
We really, really have.
Mm.
We started way back with the macro trade strategies, analyzing the shift from the nimble Asian tiger export model to India's unique, highly complex hybrid growth-led approach. We realized that India simply cannot be a butterfly. It has to be a very smart, very agile elephant.
We deeply unpacked the branding machinery of Make in India. We moved way past the lion logo and looked at the hardcore 6Ps framework and the immense environmental ambition behind zero defect, zero effect. We asked the genuinely hard, cynical questions about whether it's just marketing fluff or real structural policy.
And we completely demystify the often confusing world of IPR. From the Basmati GI tags that physically protect our rural farmers to the heavyweight legal battle of Novartis versus the Union of India that directly protects our most vulnerable patients. And finally, the 2016 national policy that desperately tries to tie all these loose threads together into a modern functioning framework.
It really is a fascinating story of a massive nation trying to find its firm footing on the global stage. It is messy, it is highly complex, but it is undeniably moving forward. And here is a final, deliberately provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over as we close. We spent an hour talking about globalization and integrating into world trade. But today, if you read the news, the main buzzword in Delhi isn't really global village anymore. It is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Self-reliant India.
Yes, that is definitely the new strategic pivot we are seeing.
So the big question for you to explore is, are we currently seeing a slow return to old-school protectionism? Are we quietly undoing the global village? Or is this actually a brand new, aggressive form of globalization where India finally dictates the terms of engagement? The source texts strongly suggest a major shift from passive integration, which is just quietly following the Western rules, to strategic autonomy, which is aggressively making the rules. Are we closing the doors to the world, or are we just finally building a much stronger house so we can invite people in, but strictly on our own terms?
That is without a doubt the defining economic question of this entire decade for India. And if you carefully analyze the recent Make in India policies, it strongly suggests the latter. We deeply want to engage with the world, but we demand to engage from a position of unshakable strength, not a position of historical dependency.
Indeed. It's going to be fascinating to watch it unfold. Now, before we officially sign off, a final important reminder. If you found real value in this deep dive, if you actually learned something profound about why the Indian economy works the way it does, please humbly take a second to subscribe to the Simplified UPSC by PPP channel. It really is the only way we can reach more students who need this level of breakdown.
And please seriously consider supporting us on Patreon if you are financially able to. It is the direct engine that keeps these intensive deep dives coming every week.
Don't forget those absolutely free notes and the high-yield practice PYQs we discussed, like that brilliant Novartis question, are waiting for you right now on the public Telegram channel. Go download them immediately and try writing the answer yourself using the structure we just gave you. But for the ultimate full archive, the highly organized premium notes, and those incredible model mains answers that will literally help you nail the exam structure, DM us right now to join the private library.
Huge thanks again to all our dedicated patrons and supporters. Keep reading deeply and keep questioning everything you read.
Absolutely. Like the video, share it with your study groups, and comment your thoughts below. Tell us what you honestly think about the elephant versus butterfly analogy. Does it hold up? Thanks so much for listening and keep learning. We will see you next time in the deep dive.